Like the BBC has finally fallen to full Islam channel. Oh yes indeed. This is the BBC, of course, that now wants £169 etc. every year from every single one of you that is watching their channel. Now I don't know if you know this, but recently the BBC chair, Samir Shah, basically said that, well, you know, we could be taxed on this and we could have it paid through our wage slips, etc. Well, he's hopeful, isn't he? Given the fact that, of course, for the very first time from a mosque in Bradford, they decided to, well, televise the whole Eid celebration, the end of Ramadan. But how successful was it? And what BBC lies did they perpetuate this time around? Let me explain. Morning, lovely to see you. Thank you so much for joining me today in a beautiful sunny moment here in the United Kingdom. Whatever you're doing, do take care of yourselves, and it's often lovely to be able to share these stories that you don't get to see on the mainstream media, particularly if you are shelling out still for the BBC. Well, you're one of the rare few, let me tell you. What I find odd, I've got to be honest, chums, is over here, what you see now as passing this programming is something like Stacey Solomon and Joe Swash, and it's kind of like a, I don't know, reality thing about their life, and you think, isn't this something I might have watched when I was skiving off school in the 1980s? You know, it's not prime time material, but according to the BBC it is, and they've paid them thousands of pounds as well for the privilege of sharing their lives. Riveting stuff, not if you look at the ratings. Here's where this gets really interesting though. A recent, for the very first time, full broadcast for over 2.5 hours in the morning of the final celebrations of Ramadan. Right, so you would have thought, well, how successful was that? Not successful at all. You know, ratings wise, a minimal audience, but costing the BBC a lot with outside trucks, presenters, overnight stays, hotels, dinners. You see how this really adds up, right? Now here's where this gets really interesting, because basically the BBC, you know, perpetuating lies. The main host asked literally live on camera about what goes on inside the mosque. And basically the person in charge of the mosque said, oh yes, everybody comes in here to pray, and as you can see, people are coming. The presenter said both men and women all pray together, and he said yes. But that's a lie. That doesn't happen. They are separated.
Question I'm often asked as well, do men and women pray together?
Yes, so there's equal access to men and women in the masjid. There's equal facilities for ablution, and all of the facilities that you have for men, you'll have also for our sisters. We refer to them as our sisters, and absolutely, they're more than welcome. And there's so much that happens more than the prayer. You know, it's a hub. There's so much for open access for men and women, and so many services that are offered from the mosque for both.
Sheikh, for the moment, thank you very much indeed. Well, I can tell you the mosque is filling up. Thank you so much, Sheikh, for the moment and for that analysis. We'll speak to you again very shortly. The mosque is one of the most beautiful I've ever been in, and I just want to tell you about my vantage point here.
The BBC, or indeed the presenter, highlighted this fact. It is a known fact, basically for more obvious reasons if you understand exactly how that operates. But again, the BBC want you to believe that this is a very peaceful sort of celebration, and in part for many, naturally it is. But the bigger picture is, well, quite frankly, why on earth would you want to pay to watch this when it's a minority in this country at this moment in time? But apparently the BBC want us to be all-encompassing, etc. Now, I was looking at the channel's listings, and I can't see too much for the celebration of Easter. Are we having a live broadcast, for instance, from a church? Or will once again that be shunted off to somewhere in the midst of nowhere on a Sunday afternoon when they think nobody's watching? Likewise, of course, Sir Keir Starmer recently put out another video from 10 Downing Street where he welcomed the end of Ramadan with a celebration inside there. Will we see the same thing happening for Easter? Because we certainly saw nothing from him regarding Lent, did we? As I said, the BBC has ultimately fallen to what many people are saying now to become the brand new Islamic channel. Neil Sean, Kensington, London.